I hope we are not live yet.
We are in the show.
Really?
Yes, we are. Bonsoir, mesdames, bonsoir, messieurs. Bienvenue dans ce Facebook Live de la Générale Sandy, accompagnée de Nalova, barista Nalova B. C'est une première d'avoir une combattante du Nozo, de l'Ambazonie, je dirais, avec nous ce soir. Good evening, Nalova. Good evening, dear listeners. First of all, we must apologize for the delay we had in starting this program. It's simply because we have been under so much pressure, and you can imagine why, because up to now, we were still in backstage discussions on whether we should carry on with this program or not. But here we are finally, and I am really grateful to Nalova to have accepted my invitation. Good evening. Over to you, Nalova.
Good evening, Sandy. Good evening, dear viewers. Sandy, thank you for the invitation. And I was about to have a panic attack from the pressure coming from both sides, but I think I'm fine now. Like we always say that the activists, we should be ready for anything that comes our way. We want to apologize to our viewers for keeping you this long. It's almost 40 minutes into the show, past time, so I think we should move on.
Thank you very much for that very brief introduction. First of all, I have to make a few things clear before we start. We have to set the scene. So I take upon me on having this program this evening, simply because we have reached a stage in our struggle where we think we should do something different in order to move forward. So I would like, first of all, to make a few things clear. On this program, I will address Nalova and every single person living in the affected regions of Cameroon. I will refer to them as Ambazonian because I believe in the state of Ambazonia. This is something that I don't shy away from, and this is a personal opinion that I hold, and I am proud to say I believe in the state of Ambazonia. First of all, so I know that among people who follow us, there are people who will not agree, and there are people who will dispute that. However, this is what we want. We want a country or two countries where we will have the freedom of speech. So therefore, tonight we will refer to those regions as Ambazonia. Second of all, I would like to make clear that I am speaking here and now as Sandy Boston. I am not a politician. I do not represent any politicians, and I do not hold any political party cards. So tonight I am speaking as an individual, of course, as a representative of the Bobi Stand Up, which is a movement of women who have decided to take the struggle to another level in order to make their voice heard. So please do not associate me or any of the people who I represent tonight as people of a party, a political party. And third of all, please, and last one, we would like to have an open, frank discussion tonight in respect of everyone who is listening and who is following us. So that's what I wanted to make clear. So tonight we will talk about, the topic we want to talk about is violence on women in war zones, especially in the regions of Ambazonia. And we cannot talk about Ambazonia and people who are affected by the genocide because let us make it clear, we will use the appropriate words. We are not going to shy away from the reality. It is a genocide in my point of view, and I'll refer to it as a genocide. So we cannot talk about those victims without also talking about the people on the other side of the Mungo who are actually receiving a lot of those victims and who are also affected by the war that is going on in Ambazonia.
Yeah, you're right there, Sandy. I really appreciate the fact that you always do acknowledge us as Ambazonia, well, especially me. And before we came to this show, you know how much people criticized us for coming together. And I want to take this opportunity to make the Ambazonians also to understand that I'm here as Naloa. I don't represent any movement. I belong to movements, but right now I don't represent any. I'm here as an individual. I'm an activist, and I want this show to stay that way, like two activists having a frank conversation about what is happening in Ambazonia and the effects of it on our brothers and sisters east of the Mungo. So that is why we are here.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Donc, pour commencer à l'entame de ce propos, j'ai tenu à mettre certains points d'éclaircissement sur des zones d'ombre, à savoir que je vais me référer aux zones affectées par la guerre au Cameroun. Je vais les appeler Ambazonie parce que pour moi, Sandy Boston, je crois en l'état d'Ambazonie simplement parce que je suis convaincu que le peuple ambazonien a le droit de lutter pour sa liberté parce que, un, il a été violé, agressé sur son territoire. De deux, il a subi tellement de pertes en vie humaine et en économie qu'aujourd'hui, il a le droit de réclamer son indépendance. Donc, nous tenions à mettre ces points sur les i et Nalova aussi a précisé qu'elle s'exprime en tant que Nalova et non en tant que représentante d'une quelconque association à laquelle elle appartiendrait. Et donc, ce soir, c'est une toute première parce que pour la première fois depuis que nous combattons le régime satanique, diabolique, génocidaire, sanguinaire de M. Biya, nous avons une femme de l'Ambazonie qui accepte de partager un plateau avec des combattantes de la région francophone. Elle le fait à ses risques et périls. Et ce soir, nous avons subi tellement de pression que pour commencer ce programme, c'était très difficile. Vous comprenez que cette femme est une femme très courageuse, une femme qui accepte de transcender les différends afin d'apporter un plus à ce combat qui nous unit. Parce que ça, il faut le dire, aujourd'hui, nous sommes unis par un seul combat, celui de débarrasser notre pays de la dictature opprimante de M. Biya. Et lorsque nous serons débarrassés de cette dictature, mon opinion, ma petite opinion personnelle, c'est qu'un référendum uniquement anglophone devrait se tenir où le peuple de l'Ambazonie devra décider de son sort. Ils ont assez subi, ils ont assez payé en termes de sang, en termes de vie humaine, en termes d'investissement, pour que nous continuions de leur imposer notre volonté. Et donc, ça, c'était quelques points d'éclaircissement que je tenais absolument à faire ce soir. Et ce soir, le débat, donc, sera centré, basé autour de la violence faite sur les femmes. Parce qu'il faut le dire, nous venons de passer la journée mondiale des droits de la femme et nous nous acheminons ici vers la journée de la déclaration des droits de l'homme. Donc, il était important pour nous, les femmes camerounaises, de montrer quelque chose de nouveau, quelque chose de différent, en espérant que nous allons inspirer toutes les femmes ambazoniennes, les femmes francophones, afin qu'elles se lèvent, parce que le destin de nos deux pays repose entre leurs mains, afin qu'elles se lèvent, se tiennent par la main et décident de débarrasser le Cameroun du dictateur. C'est de ça qu'il est question ce soir. Donc, ce programme sera en français. Nalova est d'expression anglophone, anglaise. Elle va s'exprimer en anglais. C'est son droit le plus absolu. Et je m'exprimerai soit en français, soit en anglais, dépendant des circonstances. Donc, so dear Nalova, I know that this is a topic that is close to your heart because you are not only originary from Ambazonia, but also this is your specialty as a lawyer. This is a study of field that you have chosen. So yeah. I am aware of that. You have a lot to say about violence on women on a personal level, but also on a professional level. But given the time that is being used for this show, I know that there is too much that you want to talk about, but you will not be able to talk about. But just to set the scene, can you please tell us, from your background, from your experience, what is the situation right now in Ambazonia, from what you have seen, from what you have heard, from testimonies?
Thank you, Sandy. I will begin from before, not now, because you cannot begin from now without, the past. We have seen a lot of bloodshed in Ambazonia since 2016. I'm sure you can remember the 8th of December 2016, where you had about 15 people were murdered at the Commercial Avenue, including Julius Akum, the student from the University of Bamenda. After that, you've had a lot of severe killings, children being killed, women killed, like you have the baby Mata that was murdered on her bed. You have the case of the 14th of February, the Gabu murders. You have so many of them. However, when we come to women, you understand that in every situation, in every violent situation, women are one of the most vulnerable groups of people, including the children and the disabled. Now, we, the women, are much more vulnerable because we are not only vulnerable to the military, we are also vulnerable to the men, like the men in the movement itself. You understand what I'm saying? As a woman, first, it's a major problem that you are an activist or you are a politician. You can name it whatever name you want to give it. The ones on the ground are going through a lot of pains, their husbands are being killed every day. The women are being raped. I will give you an example. When I was in Nigeria, I went to the refugee camp and I met more than 20 women who were pregnant, and you will not believe this. All these women were raped. Yeah, they were raped by the soldiers. And then some of them did not even know that they were pregnant until they ran into Nigeria. And then they discovered that they were pregnant. So what do you do in a situation like that? All you have to do is cry for help now from us in the diaspora, because it looks like the international community has practically forgotten about us and our humanitarian crisis. Now, I don't want to go about those who are in the bushes. The women in the bushes can hardly have proper hygiene. As a woman, you should know that hygiene is part and parcel of us. We cannot succeed without hygiene, good hygiene. You go into the bushes, the women use leaves from the trees as sanitary towels. Women put to bed in bushes. That it doesn't make sense. Now, when some of them struggle to come like cross the borders into Nigeria, it's like there's little or no difference, because the international humanitarian organizations that are supposed to be helping us, they are not doing that. It is now left for Ambazonians to, while they are trying to fight the oppressors, they are trying to feed their own. A lot of women have kids without husbands. Most of them have become widows because the military has decided to murder their husbands. Most of them have been taken like slaves, like sex slaves for the military. The question is, what do we do? The international community seems not to be interested in what is going on. I will give you an example. Look, like what happened in the northern part of Cameroon. The lady, the women and the children that were murdered. Everybody sang like, oh, this is bad, this shouldn't happen. BBC was, you know, they did everything, did videos, and what happened? That was the end. Nobody heard about it anymore. Now, then you can imagine Ambazonians that people still look at us as a group of terrorists, and then we have all these same problems. So where do we go to? So as a woman, it's so difficult to live in a situation like that. Now you leave the women on the ground who are suffering, you leave the refugees who have moved to other countries. Now you come to us who are now in the heart of the struggle. We don't experience the physical violence because violence can be in any form, you understand? It must not necessarily be the rape, the killings, you know. There are other ways that people can penetrate violence towards you, right? You come to those of us in the diaspora, we are not finding it easy from our people, especially when you are a woman. To be a woman in a movement like this, Sandy, I'm sure you can agree with me that it is not an easy thing. Now, I will use myself as an example. In January 2018, on the 5th of January, I was arrested alongside 11 men in Nigeria after I ran away from Cameroon and then like moved to Nigeria, thinking that Nigeria was much more safer. And then I was in Nigeria for like 1 year and then I was arrested. Now, I will not want to go into much of the details during my detention in the prison, but it is not something that I always want to think about it, because when I think about it, then it's like my life will come at it, like I will go on like freeze. You know, I was in jail and I got pregnant, and in jail I got a miscarriage, and then, you know, like it's not an easy thing. You understand? So what I am thinking is, as a woman like you, who have been very supportive to not only towards me, I think to the entire Ambazonia course, and the Bobby-TANAP also have been very supportive. I think it is time for us as women to forget about the politics of everything that is going on. We know that there's always going to be politics, but it's time that we call the attention of the international community to look at especially our women, because the truth is, when the women are affected, the children are affected. So now it's just like one person, but then the line goes and keeps, you know, going. So the women are actually the center of the problem. Because if you kill my husband and then I'm left with the children, and then the children don't go to school, the children cannot eat, and then the problem continues. So I think it is time that we should come together and call on the international community to at least look into the situation of those who are vulnerable in this crisis. They can always do their politics. The international community is good at doing its politics, but when it comes to humanitarian affairs, I am thinking that they are more than what they are doing right now. I understand that the UNHCR in Nigeria is doing a lot for the refugees. I actually speak to a lot of them, because when I came out of detention, a lot of them tried to offer me like psychological help and all that. They are doing a lot, but it is not just enough, because you can't just allow the more than 1 million refugees in Nigeria in the hands of the United Nations alone. There are other NGOs that need to take part in helping these refugees. Now you go to the internally displaced, that those that have moved to the neighboring Cameroon. Now there's a home, you will meet like 15 people for a 2-bedroom flat. It's not an easy thing, and nobody's there to help them. If they don't have somebody in the diaspora that will say, okay, this is $50, you guys can use this for the entire month, then they end up working prostitution. Because from what we gathered, a lot of young girls that have moved from Ambazonia seeking refuge in Cameroon have become prostitutes because they cannot feed themselves. Some of them don't have where to live. These are some of the things that women face when there is violence. It can be the military versus the restoration forces. It can be the military versus the Amber Boys. It can be the military versus anybody. But then the problem is those caught in the middle are always the women and the children. It's been more than 4 years now that the children are out of school. How do we get them back to school? They said the future of every nation lies in the children. In Ambazonia, I don't know what our own children will become after the war. So what I think is the war can still go on, but then we can find a solution for our women and our children. Those are the two groups of people that I'm very worried about. Women becoming prostitutes, children not going to school. Women being raped and having kids out of wedlock, unable to feed themselves, unable to feed the kids. Those are the people that we should be very worried about right now.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right in that sense, because women are among the most vulnerable people in a population. So when you list the sort of issues that women are facing on the ground right now, and how they are easy targets for men, regardless, this is quite alarming. And this is why we have decided to take the voice of those people on the ground to the highest places. This is why we have decided to protest in the most expressive ways. When you talk about baby Martha, I remember very sharply how me as a mother, I felt when I heard that a 7-month-old baby was shot dead in her own crib. Was she a danger to anyone?
Hell no.
When I remember exactly how I felt when there was the Ngabu massacre, where children were killed, targeted and killed by the military. I remember that day, and I remember wanting to take my life away so that this could never happen again. And this is why we as the Bobitanap, and not only the Bobitanap, the French-speaking activists have taken this struggle to another level, because we think 4 years of genocide is enough. 4 years of mass killings is enough. 4 years of children being forced to prostitute themselves in the streets of Douala and Yaoundé is enough. 4 years of women not having any sanitary conditions in the bushes, having their babies killed by snakes, having to use leaves in the forest to clean themselves. It is enough by any means. And we are prepared, we are really prepared to do whatever it takes to get the international community to create, and this is very important, and I'm repeating this, to create a buffer zone where people can access healthcare, medication, sanitation, food. This is the only conflict I have ever seen where there is no buffer zone. I mean, even in Iraq, there was a buffer zone where people were receiving humanitarian help. Therefore, we are prepared to do whatever it takes. And we would honestly like women from Ambazonia who have first-hand access to people on the ground to join us so that together we can raise our voices. We can join our hands into helping the people on the ground, women, children. And we know that a woman's voice always counts where we live. We know that if we come together, this will be a big, massive signal, not only to the brutal regime that is murdering people on the ground, but also to the international community, and tell them, these are the people who are presented to you as murderers, terrorists. These are the people who are darkened in the newspapers, in the media, so that you are not coming to intervene. Here we are joining hands. They are not terrorists to us, they are victims. They are not murderers to us, they are people who are defending themselves. They are people who are applying self-defense. And we believe that showing a common front will be the start of something different that could stop this genocide. Donc, en quelques mots, je disais effectivement, suite à ce que Nalova a dit, que la communauté internationale n'intervient pas en Ambazonie parce que on leur présente les Ambazoniens comme des terroristes. On commet des crimes odieux et on met sur le dos des Ambazoniens afin que la communauté internationale ne puisse pas intervenir. Nalova a relevé le cas de l'extrême nord où des femmes avaient été tuées avec leur bébé au dos et la BBC a même fait un documentaire qui a eu un prix international. Les gens en ont parlé, RFI et tout, mais personne ne parle de ce qui se passe en Ambazonie en ce moment. Et donc, j'en ai profité donc pour dire à Nalova et à tous les Ambazoniens, toute la communauté ambazonienne qui nous suit, pour leur dire que lorsque la communauté nationale et internationale verra des mamans, des femmes qui ont porté leurs enfants dans le ventre, se mettre ensemble, s'arrêter la main dans la main et marcher dans les rues de Paris, de Washington, de New York, de Londres et je ne sais où, alors un message sera envoyé pour dire à cette communauté internationale que ceux qu'on vous présente comme des terroristes ne sont en fait que des gens qui se défendent de l'agression sur leur territoire. Ceux qu'on vous présente comme des gens, des barbares, des sauvages, ne sont en fait que des victimes. Et nous voici ensemble aujourd'hui. Et ce message sera porté plus haut que lorsque nous sommes chacun dans son coin en train de crier génocide, génocide, génocide. Unissons nos voix afin de les élever aux plus hautes instances internationales et montrons à ce régime qu'il ne va plus continuer à diviser pour mieux régner. Nous avons un seul ennemi, un ennemi commun qui est Monsieur le génocidaire, grabataire, Biya Bimvondo Barthélemy alias Satan. Et lorsque nous allons nous unir pour le chasser, nous pourrons enfin, après le chassement, nous asseoir autour d'une table et discuter du sort de nos pays. C'est donc de ça qu'il était question. Et donc, Nalova a développé à peu près les besoins sur le terrain, la situation réelle que les femmes vivent sur le terrain. Elle a un peu évoqué aussi son histoire à elle parce qu'elle avait été kidnappée au Nigeria, emprisonnée. Elle est tombée enceinte dans ces conditions. Et elle nous révèle en effet que son cas n'est pas unique. C'est le cas des milliers de femmes de l'Amazonie qui sont violées, qui sont violentées, abusées. Alors, ce soir, nous voulons, avec cet exercice, jeter les bases d'une collaboration entre femmes combattantes, afin, d'aider à pallier à la situation sur le terrain, c'est-à-dire aider les femmes victimes de la guerre, du génocide, mais aussi deux, élever les voix afin d'interpeller la communauté internationale. So, Nalova, as we are speaking right now, and I know that you have been under enormous pressure as an Amazonian woman who wants to do things differently in order to have an impact on the ground and on the situation in Cameroon. So could you let us know or tell us just a little bit of the kind of difficulties that you are facing as an activist who wants to help women on the ground, but also an activist who is looking at things forward and thinking differently, trying to open different doors, because probably we have tried, not only you as Ambazonians, but definitely us as well as freedom fighters. We have been trying separately to end this situation, and we are obviously having a lot of difficulties doing so. So on your side, is it okay to tell us what kind of difficulties that you are facing in doing that?
Thank you, Sandy. First, we have a lot of difficulties reaching the ground, especially with the little help most of the time that we want to give those in need, whether the men, the women, the children. You will understand that the Cameroon government has made it in such a way that even if you receive money from abroad, it doesn't really matter where the money is coming from. Even if it's coming from a pastor, you risk being arrested. If you are my neighbor, you risk being arrested. So it's very difficult to reach out to the people and help them, like proper helping. Those who successfully carry things to the needy, like to the women and children in the bushes, most of them get arrested. You can bear with me, like the Aya Foundation has been summoned and detained so many times, countless times. So imagine that they would do that to someone like Aya Foundation. Then imagine then if it's just an individual who doesn't belong to any organization, the person might just end up spending the rest of his or her life in jail. So it's really, really difficult to communicate with these people. And a lot of them leave their homes without phones. You know, you don't run during a crisis and the only thing you want to take is a phone. So most of them even go into those bushes without any means of communication. And even if you take a phone, how many areas in Amazonia has internet? So you will just be in the bush without a phone. So we will have to go all over, go to the villages, try to trace routes in the villages that lead to where we think can be the safest place. And then in those bushes, we now try to see if we can see people who have settled there, and then we can continue from there. You wanted to know the difficulties that I find as an activist, a female activist. I think I mentioned that earlier. The lots of difficulties. I have difficulties from the men, from the women, and most of all from the people I'm fighting for. You know, as a woman, I started this struggle in 2016 in October. I had just finished from the law school and I came back to Cameroon to practice. Then when I came back, it looks like the practice was not what I was anticipating. And then I was called to the Cameroon bar in May 2015. And then in October 2016, we went on our strike, which eventually did not end until today. I have this problem as a woman. I don't know about the other women, but I have this problem of like the men are always seeing you like every step you take, every progress you make, and the fact that I'm a single woman and a single mother, it doesn't help the situation. You know, every step you take, especially a major step, they always want to think that you had to succeed because of some fishy means. You know, they always want to believe that if you can do this, it means there is this man behind you. The men don't want to accept the fact that there are women who are stronger, who are smarter than them. You know, when I was arrested in Nigeria with the other 11 people, I had a lot of backlashes from everywhere when I was released. They didn't just understand why I was released, and the others were not released. But you see, I am in a crisis, and in my life, I've always learned. If you knew me before now, I have always been the type of child that I don't depend so much on people. I always have a plan A, B, C, D, and my mother used to say, I'm her only child that has from plan A to Z, any situation, right? I was in Nigeria, and I am partly from Nigeria, and the other men knew that I was partly from Nigeria. And when I was arrested, I told them that I was partly from Nigeria, but then they still wanted to send me to Cameroon. But then it was one of the men who actually called their attention that, hey, no, this girl is partly a Nigerian, and do you want to send Nigerians back to Cameroon? You see, but then when I got out, the people who were out here thought that I made a deal with the Nigerian government. You see how complicated it was. And then you have these stories like, oh, you were having an affair with a commissioner. You have it. Now these stories start to come. You know, I was released with another man, but no one talks about this man. No one cares how he was released. All they care about is how the woman was released. Because according to them, a woman cannot just be released like that. She has to do those things that they consider bad in order to be released. It's a very challenging situation because you are fighting for your people, you're fighting for your children, because the truth is, as much as I'm fighting for the people of Ambazonia, I'm fighting for my children the most. My children might not end up to be like me. They might not end up to be smart as me. And then what happens to them? You know, so I want to give them a better country. But when you are fighting for your children, you are fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves, but want you to fight for them. And then you have the other people who are your own people fighting you. It's not an easy job. Trust me. Sometimes you want to do things, but then when you look at the consequences of doing the good thing, you are like, okay, you know what? This thing is not for me. I'm doing it for millions of people that I don't know majority of them. Rather than going through the stress, why don't I just sit back and relax? I have done so for almost a year or two since I came out of detention. And then all of a sudden, I got a call from someone. I have a very good friend in the US. I'm sure you know him. And then he says to me, you know what? stop doing what you're doing, because this struggle is your passion. You gave everything for this struggle. You were there from the beginning. You cannot abandon those people in the market. I will tell you, when we started this struggle, we did not just wake up one morning and we're like, oh, the lawyers, we are angry. We don't want to go to work, so we are on strike. We didn't do that. We did a lot of sensitization, a lot of it. We were in Widikum, we were in Batibo, villages that I've never been to before, to make sure that we are able to explain to the community why we, the lawyers, must go on this strike, the necessity of the strike. It wasn't for us as lawyers, it was for them as our clients. And the population understood that. Now, we did the same things when the teachers called their strike on the 23rd. We helped them to do the sensitization together. I remember when I was standing at the Commercial Avenue and sharing flyers to taxi drivers. I was sharing flyers to Okada drivers, you know. And then now you come, and then the diaspora, believe me, the diaspora is supposed to be the backbone of the revolution. You know, when I was on the ground, I used to see them like they were like our fathers and we were the children, but then we needed to work hard. But then all of a sudden, I now start seeing them like, oh, no, they're not just doing the things I was hoping that they were going to be doing. You know, now they're fighting me, fighting each other, fighting. I don't know what is going on anymore. You know, but then I have decided that I would do the thing that I agreed, the things that I told the mothers in the market, the things that I told the women in the bush markets, because we used to go to bush markets. I'm sure you know what that means. Like, yeah, like on the market day in the village, because that's where you meet a lot of people at the square. And I have also been a businesswoman in the food market. I sold cosmetics for 6 years, so I'm very, very used to the market people. So I spoke to them, the reason why the strike must go on, the reason why they must obey the ghost town. And coming from me, they had seen for long, they trusted, and a lawyer more to that, it made most of them willing, you know, to do the ghost towns. We used to call sometimes 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, and they would go without hesitating. Now we have a situation where those same people, they see different faces and they don't know some of those faces. And then we see, now we're in the diaspora, and then we are saying that, well, let's go on ghost town. And then the people are like, okay, and why don't you come and do the ghost town yourself? You know, because things have changed. You know, now the struggle you have the activists, you have the politicians, and then you have the bystanders. Now we have different categories. But one thing I'm sure is that we all, no matter how scattered we are, the only thing I'm sure is that all of us, we want to go to Buea. That is the only thing that right now, Sandy, if you ask me, I will tell you 8 million Amazonians want to go to Buea. But now the problem is, how do we get to Buea? Are we going through Nigeria? Are we coming through Equatorial Guinea to Yaoundé to Buea? Now that is where we have a problem. Now, I am not a politician, although many people say I'm a politician, but I'm not. I think I will look at myself more as an activist. I think that it is time, like you already said, we the women have a lot of power that we don't know. A lot of power. And because we come from a society where we believe that the man is the head of the house, and even in situations like this, we still try to do that, you know, like let the men lead. You understand? Yeah. And I think that's a wrong approach. And I think it's time that the women should also try. You know, the men have been trying. I think it's time that we, the women, should move forward and also try, and then see how it goes. Women can always knock those doors that, believe me, that the keys are missing. They can open them. I know that because I do it, and I always do it. Those doors that people say no one can open it, you just need an intelligent woman to open it wide without having like one tear run down from her eyes or a sweat coming down from her face because we were gifted like that from birth. Now, what I want to do is to encourage more women to sit up, and with the women also, we need to try to stop to fight each other. I know it's our nature. I know it's our nature to fight each other, but sometimes when you know that it's your nature to fight your sister, then you know the problem, then you have a solution. You know, Sandy, you and I have, we met online before we met physically, and I always tell you that the courage you have, sometimes I doubt if I have that amount of courage. And I'm like, okay, I will join you to do this. And then when it comes, I'm like, hell no, Sandy, you are on your own. I am not joining you. Yeah. So, I think we need to start appreciating those women that are strong enough to do those things that we cannot do. It will move us forward. And like you said, that it's time for the women to come together, whether Ambazonian or Cameroonian, to come together and move to the streets of New York, Paris, and all that, and ask the international community to hold Biya responsible for the genocide on the Ambazonian people. I think that is a good strategy. You can imagine that 1,000 women, you don't need more than that on each street on the same day. Imagine that 1,000 women, Takumbeng mothers, come out on a particular day. Do you know what it means? The entire universe will go on standstill. That is what we as women need. We shouldn't even bother about the men and their politics. Men were born like that. They are politicians, but we, the women, are supposed to do the job. That is why in the house, we do the cleaning, the ironing, the washing, everything. And the only thing the man does is he claims he goes to work and brings the money. So it is time for us to collaborate. We might come from different countries, but we might also be able to work together. Being an Ambazonian or being a Cameroonian does not stop us from looking for common ways to solve our different problems.
Absolutely.
I don't even think that there are some problems that we have jointly right now, because Biya is killing our people. And our people are moving east of the Mongo. Now the people, the population of that lives east of the Mongo are feeling the struggle caused by Biya in Ambazonia. So at the end of the day, now the thing has become interconnected with each other. Now, because we are not politicians, what we need to do is get the international community to come and solve our immediate problems. We have been crying for a fact-finding mission for more than 1 year today, because you cannot say people should go and dialogue or negotiate, for example, without an independent fact-finding mission from the United Nations to say 50,000 people have been killed, 50,000 women have been raped, 50 babies were killed. How do you now go for negotiations? Because those are the facts that you need to put on the table, and then you start talking. Until now, we don't have that. And because we don't have that, there is no negotiation is going to, is going to go properly. We will just be going, there was a national dialogue, if I can remember. We will keep going. We will keep going in same circles and same circles and same circles. So what I think is why we are calling on the international community to hold Biya accountable for the genocide. We are asking the NGOs to do their job, take care of the needy, the vulnerable, because that is what they are meant for. We should also ask them to send us a fact-finding mission. That is very important for any negotiation to be proper. We all need to know what has been going on, rather than seeing pictures on Facebook, on Twitter. I can just decide to take a picture from Gabon and put, and Biya also can decide to debunk it. So at the end of the day, only the UN can tell us exactly what has been going on. When we call it a genocide, it is because we know there are more than 3,000 people that have been killed. In the UN, once the threshold reaches 3,000, it is a genocide. But since the war started, Not according to La Republic, according to the NGOs, they keep saying that it's 3,000 people because they don't want to go above that limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get to discover that, oh, it looks like we are on our own, because if the NGOs can't speak the truth, then who are we counting on? Last year, Amnesty, is it Amnesty? No, Human Rights Watch.
Human Rights Watch.
Yeah, they said they killed 3,000 people. And do you know this year, they said they killed 3,000 people. Now I begin to wonder, and then what about the other people that they killed? What about the Gabu massacre? It was everywhere. So those people, are they part of the 3,000? Were they anticipating for those people to be killed? Of course, the answer is no. But then you look, Cameroon is a government, it's a well-established government, you know. They can always make even the NGOs that we are counting on to do what they want them to do. So it is for us to forget these ones that are based on the ground and go out there and make people to understand that their figures are wrong, their statistics are wrong, what they know is wrong. Now that is our job, and that will be the job of the women. No woman comes into your office crying and you turn your face the other way. It doesn't happen. But if you see a man going for diplomacy, Sandy, believe me, I'm not going to give you even like, how do they usually say, we condemn, because I'm sick and tired of people saying that we condemn, like the UN always say we condemn the killings of how many people in the northern Anglophone Cameroon, like, because the men have their ego. You meet another man, he has his ego, you are all talking like everybody is the boss, you know. But when we get in there, I know somebody like you, Sandy, if we get there and they don't listen to you, it's easy for you to strip naked, you know. And then they have to listen. But the man will not do that. He will continue to keep his pride and his ego. So I think it's a good idea that we come together. It doesn't matter who we are. We come together, go to the street, and ask for those things that we think are important for both causes.
It is. You have touched on a very important point there, because first of all, I would acknowledge that the most of the anger from Ambazonia towards the Francophone people is that they believe that the Francophone people haven't done anything when the conflict started and when it became a full open war to support the people on the ground in Ambazonia. And this is something that we have raised our hands and acknowledged and said, yes, we do acknowledge that we didn't do much or anything at all. However, like you have said, we have come to wake up to what was happening in Cameroon and in Ambazonia. We have woken up, we have started the job of telling the whole world what is happening, denunciating the crimes that were happening, but not only that, but also taking action in doing some diplomacy, some strong actions on the ground to make the world know what is going on in Cameroon. Now, you touch a point where you said Mr. Biya has been very successful in silencing all the media and all the international community. We know that he spends a lot of money. He pays very big lobbies so that the situation of Cameroon is not raised in international medias. And in international instances. He spends a lot of money trying to maintain himself in power. He spends a lot of money trying to depict the fighters on the ground as savage people, as terrorists, and trying to make the world believe that he is in fact protecting the territory, when he's the one that deployed the army on very, very peaceful civilians who were, and you were among them, among those lawyers that were just having corporate reclamations. So we know that Mr. Biya is doing everything he can so that the lid is not open and the world can see the ugliness, the barbarity that is happening in Cameroon. And this is where we come into play. Like you said, if we come together and have a big, massive demonstration in the streets of any big developed city in the world, that would be a massive statement. But also, if we come together and start knocking at those doors that have been closed for 4 years. So I know for a fact, because I have been going to all these places, I know that there was a commission of Ambazonian that went to the United Nations and gave a document there to the Human Rights Commission. I know that because I was there. They have received the Ambazonian document. They have received my document. They are receiving different little groups' documents. But this is not having an impact because it's not one big document of all Cameroonians saying to them, we are coming together because we want this to end. Donc, en fait, pour reprendre le propos de Nalova, Nalova a soulevé un point très important qui est que la communauté internationale continue de rester très silencieuse quant au massacre qui se passe dans les régions en guerre au Cameroun. Et il est important de relever cela parce que M. Biya a fait asseoir un blackout médiatique total sur la situation de l'Ambazonie. M. Biya paye des lobbies très puissants à l'étranger afin que les médias internationaux ne parlent pas du problème du Cameroun. Même lorsqu'il y a eu le massacre de Ngabou, tout le monde s'est indigné, mais aucune commission n'est venue sur le terrain pour mener les enquêtes. Human Rights Watch qui était venu, qui a mené les enquêtes, qui a eu des preuves, M. Biya s'est arrangé à ce que le résultat de leurs enquêtes n'aboutisse à rien du tout. Et M. Biya s'est même encore arrangé à ce que toutes ces commissions des droits de l'homme, toutes ces organisations internationales ne viennent pas sur le terrain constater ce qui se passe effectivement en Ambazonie afin de faire des recommandations. Alors, comment est-ce que M. Biya peut organiser un semblant de dialogue sans avoir les faits réels, les faits sur le terrain pour dire nous avons les preuves que dans tel village, tel nombre de personnes ont été tuées à telle date par telle personne et sont enterrées à tel endroit, par exemple. Nous avons les preuves que ce village a été brûlé. Nous avons les preuves que ces populations sont dans tel village, se sont déplacées. Il empêche même aux organisations humanitaires, telles que M. Aya, qui sont sur le terrain, d'aider les populations. C'est-à-dire qu'il tue les gens et il leur empêche de recevoir de l'aide. Il tue des populations, il massacre des femmes, des enfants et il leur empêche de recevoir de l'aide, non seulement au niveau national, mais aussi de la communauté internationale. C'est-à-dire c'est un génocide à ciel ouvert. Et donc, notre rôle en tant qu'activistes, c'est que nous devons absolument trouver des voies et moyens afin que ce couvercle d'obscurité dont M. Biya a couvert le Cameroun soit levé. Et l'un des moyens de le faire, c'est d'organiser une grande marche des femmes, nous répétons des femmes, parce que là, il s'agit des femmes qui ont donné naissance, des femmes qui ont porté leurs enfants, des femmes qui pleurent de la situation au Cameroun, une grande marche des femmes ambazoniennes et des femmes francophones, que ce soit à Paris, New York, Washington, Berlin, n'importe où, 500 000 femmes. Et le monde parlera de ce qui se passe au Cameroun. Et non seulement ça, que nous nous joignons les mains afin de mener ces actions diplomatiques ensemble. Parce que nous étions, les Bobby Tanap étaient à Genève dernièrement. Nous avons déposé une plainte contre M. Biya et son gouvernement. Mais nous avons appris dans le processus que la patronne des droits de l'homme, Mme Bachelet, était en train de recevoir une commission ambazonienne. Et donc, il y a toutes ces petites associations, chacun va déposer son dossier à gauche, à droite. Un petit groupe des ambazoniens résidant à Genève dépose un dossier contre l'État du Cameroun. Les Bobby Tanap déposent les leurs. Un autre groupe de combattants vient déposer. Ça fait que tous ces petits dossiers ne sont pas pris au sérieux. Par contre, si nous nous mettons ensemble et que nous disons, OK, ces gens-là voient que nous ne sommes pas unis, donc ils ne nous prennent pas au sérieux, donc ils pensent que nos problèmes ne sont pas importants. Pourquoi ne nous mettons-nous pas ensemble et nous allons tous, avec la même voix, voir la Commission des droits de l'homme et leur dire, nous sommes ici en tant que les femmes camerounaises du côté anglophone et du côté francophone et nous sommes venus réclamer la fin de la guerre au Cameroun. Pourquoi pas? Et que si arrivé là-bas, ces gens refusent de nous recevoir, nous nous mettons nus toutes et on décide qu'aujourd'hui, c'est ça ou rien. Pourquoi pas? Pourquoi pas? Nous avons vu les femmes se mettre au devant de la marche pour la manifestation à Paris contre la loi sécuritaire. Et tout le monde a applaudi. On a dit, voilà, les femmes se mettent au devant, elles se dénudent et tout. Parce que c'est une expression très forte. Pourquoi est-ce que nous, les mamans, francophones et anglophones, ne nous tenons-nous pas par la main et allons pleurer devant ces gens et leur dire, nous sommes fatigués d'enterrer nos maris. Nous sommes fatigués d'enterrer nos enfants. Nous sommes fatigués. Vous vous rappelez, do you remember, these are the pictures that stick to my mind. The pictures after the massacres of Gabu, of those women digging the ground to bury their husband, to bury their children. What is the most painful thing for any woman on earth than to bury her own child? Those women in Kumba who kissed their children goodbye in the morning, gave them breakfast, gave them instructions when they come back from school. They might have had to go and fetch water or fetch firewood or any normal activity that any child in that region would do. For them to be called in the middle of the day and hear that the child is no longer just because they went to school. Any woman, anywhere, will not remain unmoved by the pain of another woman crying her soul out because her child has just been murdered, butchered in the most horrible way. It's so good to sit on Facebook and say, oh, RIP, I am Kumba, and I am this, and I am that. We want action. It's actions that would change the course of this war. Action, and action now. Let's put those little egos to the side of who did what and where and when, who is capable of what. Is not about us. It's about the people that are continuing to pay the price on the ground.
Sandy, you know, that is why we must do it collectively. as women, if we want the international community to step in and put an end to the crisis, not just putting an end to the crisis, because it's not like they are just going to come and say crisis stop and then
I think
it's going
our
to stop.
video has been stopped on Facebook. I don't know, somebody probably, people have been, we are no longer live.
Really?
Yeah. We are not live anymore.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me check. Where's Nancy?
She's so big. Ah, dear me. Right. Now,
Are you sure we are live?
you are live. Is it showing live there? Yeah. Right.
We are live, like seriously.
Okay. On
Okay.
my,
Like what I was saying, I was trying to say that we need to do this collectively. For example, I'm the SG of the Southern Cameroons Women's League. It's a movement of only women, of Amazonian women, women who are married to Amazonian men. For example, if you were married to an Amazonian man, it doesn't matter if you are from La Republique, you could join us. And we have done a lot of diplomacy. We've met a lot of diplomats. We've talking to them. Spoken to them one on one. Like we were in Paris to meet Sébastien Nadol, and we spoke to him. And it looks more like the France is a major hindrance to the entire problem. You know, the fact that France keeps saying release all the prisoners, end the war. I think if France wants this war to end, I think the following day France will be asking La Republic to go to the table and talk with Amazonians. But because France is not interested in allowing Amazonians go in an illegal union, they claim to be like, we are interested in solving the problem, but we are not solving the problem. That is how it now moves. Now, so what I think is while we try to call on the international community, I think special attention should be put towards France. You know, like I was very, very impressed what Calibri did to Macron. I was so happy, you know, like we need to do things that France will understand that we know they are the cause of our immediate problems. And they need to let us go, or they need to ask these two people to go to the table. Like I usually say that time has come where what I'm more interested in is to make sure that both parties sit on the table. Now, whatever my Amazonian leaders go to that table and decide, I will believe that they know what is best for me. But the first thing is both parties need to sit on it. And I think that Amazonians are not afraid to negotiate. Like my friend said that, but they will not negotiate out of fear. If La Republic is on the table, Ambazonia definitely is on the table. And then they can decide what future they want for both parties. If our leaders come out and tell us that, okay, Ambazonians, we have gone to the negotiations after everything, considering the fact that we have you people at heart, this is what we thought that was going to be better for us as a people. I think because they are our leaders, we are obliged to trust them. I think that's why people are leaders. You know, you don't make somebody your leader and you don't trust. You need to.
the sound has gone.
Okay. So, like I was saying, that is the essential part of all of this. While we try to tell the world the genocide, the fact-finding mission, we should always also try to make sure that France gets his, I don't know whether it's the daughter or the son, which is La République, to the table. It's very, very essential that it happens.
It's going to be a very difficult one because, as you said, rightfully so, France is at the beginning, at the heart of this struggle. This war happened because of France's greediness on Amazonia resources. That's the truth. And France is not willing to let go because they know that if they let go of Amazonia, they are losing a lot. So it's our duty now to make every single other country around that Security Council table to isolate France, to make them guilty of what is happening in Cameroon, to name and shame them, but most importantly, to make them take responsibility of what is going on the ground in Cameroon now. Because France has been unbelievably silent. They say, oh, we condemn this, like you said, oh, we condemn that, but they only condemn in the newspapers. They don't say or do anything. We saw in Mali as they acted very swiftly because the interests were at stake. We saw in Ivory Coast how they acted very swiftly. But when it comes to Cameroon, because the interest is with the Biya government, they are not willing to act. So it's for us to establish that relationship of force whereby we have the power to oblige them to back off. Just back off and let us sort our problems in our country. And I am certainly not one of those who think that we must go begging France for anything. Although we recognize that France is and will remain a partner of both countries in the future, we have the duty to make them respect us in that partnership. So we have to, and this is why it's important to come together, because we have two common enemies, which are France, France is a strategic enemy now, not an enemy that we're going to fight and take weapons to fight against them, but they are a strategic enemy to the well-being of our populations in Cameroon and Amazonia. And we also have the government that France supports. So it's important that faced by that situation, we come together and oppose them a real force on a diplomatic level, on the ground, so that they have no other choice but to respect the will of our people. So you are very, very right in that respect. I mean, France has been playing a very dirty role in Cameroon, and we must not shy away from naming and shaming them. And we must also, most importantly, get some more countries that support our cause and that can oppose France at a higher level and say, look, this has been going on for years now. It's time you stop your dirty game in Cameroon and Amazonia. We need to find ways to do that. People like Sebastien Nadeau are very rare. He's one of the few French representatives that actually speaks the truth about what is going on in Cameroon.
Yeah.
We must try and find other voices so that he's not isolated within France, but most importantly, out of France. We must carry on with the work that we have started with the US Senate, for example. Now that we have the Democrat in power in the US, that must be very good news for all of us, provided that the work that we have started with the Democrat Party in applying sanctions in Cameroon carries on. It's very important that we isolate Mr. Biya on an international level, and that we start speaking up and people start talking about what is going on. So for us, the task is a very big task, but it's not impossible because we have succeeded in doing that the last few years. Now we have to lift that mediatic blackout. We need to find a way to have international media on the ground, tell the world, show the world, most importantly. It's a little bit like what was going on in Rwanda. The world did not wake up until they saw the pictures, the images of mass burial, children's skeletons, and all the atrocities that were going on there. We need to find a way to make the world wake up to the darkness that is in Cameroon at this time.
You know, Sally, I'm surprised. Sorry, I'm surprised that we are about having another Rwanda, and I'm surprised that nobody cares, because I know the UN said they were never going to allow something like what happened in Rwanda to repeat itself. But then I'm surprised that it is repeating itself right in front of them, and nobody seems to be seeing. Now they are seeing and nobody cares. So I'm really, I continue to think, like, what is going on? Is it that these people are so they are so attached to the Biya government that they think that letting us go, they are going to lose something? Of course, we all know that Ambazonia has a lot of resources, you know, but sometimes breaking away, like we were never together even to begin with. It's like, you know, we always say that you will not be married, you know, living, you know, a relationship which was just boyfriend and girlfriend, and then having these problems it's unfortunate, because if I can remember well, in 2013, I was in Juba. I did a stage in Juba, and then I learned a bit about the war and the South Sudan war and all that. Then I discovered that even the oil, they had it negotiated, you know, when they were separating. You know, the Sudan has the tunnels, the South Sudan has the oil, you know, and then they negotiated how to go about this, which is what we can always do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that when we say we want to leave, it means that we are going to carry everything. I think even when you get angry and you want to leave your boyfriend's house, sometimes you leave something in the house, you know. So we will not just go, but I think they are so afraid, especially those countries that have interest in Limbe, for example. Those countries that have interest in Xi'an, a lot of them seem not to be happy with the fact that we want to go, but then they forget so soon that those things that interest them will always be there, you know, and they will always meet other, you know, the government of Amazonia to always negotiate those things with them. That is what they forget. But I think Biya's government is so corrupt that sometimes I begin to think that it has corrupted the other nations. Yeah, that is how corrupt this. You know, you and I know that the Biya's government is so corrupt. You know, and it will not be unfair to say that they might have just corrupted some of these governments. You know, because nobody in their right senses will read a report in 2018 and see that there were 3,000 people that were killed. And then in 2019, you see 3,000 people. Then in 2020, you see 3,000 people. And then the war is still going on.
The war is going on. So
exactly. And how do you explain this? So at the end of the day, the only explanation, the only logical explanation I have is that Bia's government has practically bribed everybody. Now, the people that will look at us and like, okay, these people need to go on the table, then I think those are the people that maybe they tried to bribe them and it didn't work, or they bribed them, but they still want to do what is right. Look at the chairlady of the Commonwealth. She was in Cameroon. I think she was the first person or so that went when this crisis started. Patricia Scotland, I think that's her name. She was the first person. You go to a country that is in crisis, you stay in the capital, you take your gold statue, and then you leave. Then how exactly did you assess the situation? You understand? Now she goes back and then she writes like everything is under control, but we call on both parties. You know, in my life, I've never heard about this word. We call on both parties like I've heard in the last 3 years. The next person that went was is it the president of the chairperson of the African Union? Yeah. He also went, took his own, and then came back. And then said, the government is having everything under control. We call on both parties to restrain from violence. No, they always use the both parties. You know, the word, even when I hear the word now, it's like I'm going to go mad. And then the Secretary General of the United Nations also went to Yaoundé. I understand that they are all respecting the territorial integrity of Cameroon, which they still think that it is one, and which they know that it is not one. But I think there is something that all of them seem to be scared of. And that thing, I know it can be only one person that everybody will be so scared of, that you will go to a country that is in crisis and you don't even get to listen to both parties to know exactly what is going on. You go to the same person perpetrating the genocide to ask the person what is going on. And then this person says, absolutely, there's nothing going on. It's just a group of people that are terrorists, nonchalant, that want to separate my country. And then you come back and you say, the government is looking for possible solutions to the problem, where we call on both parties to restrain from violence. You know, they have this line that I think they always craft on every violence, whether it is Syria, whether it is Yemen. They just craft this particular line and then they just put on the communique, and that is it. So we need to look for what it is that these people, that is making these people turn their eyes so far away from a crisis that has left millions of children out of school, have left millions of people out of their homes, out of their countries. We need to look for that. Until we are able to see that, we might just be moving from one office to the other, and we give them, like you said, that would give them the communique, the whatever we write, the memorandums and whatever we write. And then the moment we walk out and they're like, these people are just a bunch of recalcitrant fellows. We don't know what they do with those things. Because if their governments are claiming not to know, or not to know the magnitude of the crisis, then what do you expect even an ambassador to know? Even if he knows, what can he do?
And this is, en effet, si ces représentations internationales, ces gouvernements, ces envoyés qui viennent au Cameroun et qui s'arrêtent à Yaoundé, on leur donne des cadeaux et ils rentrent et ensuite ils font des communiqués pour dire « Oh, on était sur le terrain et nous appelons les deux parties à se mettre sur la table pour un dialogue. » Il nous faut trouver des moyens, justement, comme on a dit, de se mettre ensemble, mais surtout de les mettre face à leurs responsabilités. Ça veut dire que nous devons trouver des médias alternatifs, des médias internationaux alternatifs, des missions internationales alternatives qui iront sur le terrain. Et ça, c'est un gros challenge parce que M. Biya, justement, empêche à toute personne d'entrer au Cameroun pour aller mener des enquêtes. Monsieur Biya arrête tout le monde à l'aéroport. On se rappelle de l'envoyé de Human Rights Watch qui n'était même pas sorti de l'aéroport de Douala. M. Biya s'arrange à ce que tous ceux qui veulent mener des enquêtes indépendantes sur la situation de l'Amazonie n'arrivent jamais là-bas. On sait que M. Atangandji a envoyé des gros bras aller menacer des pasteurs américains qui étaient sur le terrain, les a fait partir en disant que c'était des espions qui sont venus regarder ce qui se passe au Cameroun. Monsieur Atangandji envoie les bandits dans les maisons des représentants internationaux, les intimider et leur demander de quitter le territoire camerounais, simplement parce qu'ils ne veulent pas que la communauté internationale se rende compte de la situation, de ce qui se passe au Cameroun. Or, on ne peut pas engager un dialogue, un véritable dialogue. Et c'est la raison d'ailleurs pour laquelle nous avons boycotté le dialogue que M. Biya avait organisé, parce que M. Biya ne peut pas organiser un soi-disant dialogue où tout le leadership ambazonien est embastillé à Kondengi. Il n'appelle personne. Il va en diasporée ramasser 2 pèlerins qui se baladaient comme ça et qui viennent représenter les peuples ambazoniens. Il s'en va concocter une opposition qui va venir se mettre à table pour valider une autre forfaiture, une autre violation du peuple ambazonien. Et à la sortie de ce dialogue, il nous dit que non, les régions affectées auront un statut spécial. Il appelle quoi statut spécial? Depuis ce statut spécial, là, combien de personnes sont mortes sur le terrain? Depuis ce statut spécial, ils nous ont fait des vidéos accompagnées du BI où ils ont dit que la paix est revenue au Nozo. Ils vont organiser les élections. Les qui sont allés tuer les enfants à Kumba? Ngabou est arrivé après le dialogue. Et jusqu'à présent, aucune enquête, aucune responsabilité. Donc, M. Biya ne peut pas organiser un dialogue factice avec des acteurs qu'il allait ramasser comme ça, des gens qu'il a fait venir du Nigeria, des personnes mortes qu'il a ressuscitées, des personnes embastillées qu'il a fait sortir. Il dit que voilà ceux qui représentent les Ambazoniens. Et aujourd'hui, on se retrouve dans une situation où le conflit s'enlise de plus en plus. M. Biya fait venir ses représentants internationaux qu'il, bien sûr, est conduit et les amène à Itoudi. Il leur donne des cadeaux et il leur fait rentrer en leur disant que le dialogue se poursuit entre les parties. Nous en avons marre de cette situation et il est temps que nous nous mettions ensemble pour trouver des solutions, mais vraiment des solutions, afin de mettre la communauté internationale devant ses responsabilités. La communauté internationale est en train de laisser un autre Rwanda se produire au Cameroun. La communauté internationale est en train de laisser la France commettre tous ces crimes, parce que ces crimes sont commis sous le couvert de la France. Au Cameroun, ça que personne ne lève le petit doigt, parce que chacun a ses intérêts là-dedans. À Limbe, nous avons la compagnie New Age, la compagnie britannique New Age, qui a signé le plus gros contrat de gaz. Nous sommes en hiver en ce moment. Nos maisons au Royaume-Uni sont chauffées par le gaz qui est exploité aux abords des Tindé à Limbe. Et c'est de ça qu'il est question. Il est question de dénoncer ces intérêts-là que les gouvernements européens privilégient par rapport à la vie humaine, alors qu'ils se disent des défenseurs des droits de l'homme, des pays de paix, des pays de démocratie. Donc, la démocratie dans leur pays se fait au prix des populations massacrées chez nous, c'est ça? C'est pour ça qu'il est temps que nous nous mettions ensemble, parce que disperser comme ça, nous ne pouvons pas. Il est temps qu'on se mette ensemble et qu'on élève nos voix, qu'on mette chacun devant ses responsabilités. Le rapport de force doit être établi et c'est le peuple qui est le rapport de force. C'est nous, le peuple. Nous devons donner le pouvoir à notre peuple de faire face à ces puissances. Cela a été fait dans tous les autres pays qui se sont libérés des dictatures. Maintenant, nous comprenons que le problème du Cameroun est un peu plus difficile parce que la France tient le Cameroun, en effet, comme le joyau de sa couronne en Afrique. La France sait que elle reste aujourd'hui la 5e puissance mondiale grâce aux ressources qu'elle exploite dans les pays africains, grâce à la monnaie qu'elle a imposée sur les autres pays africains. Et la France sait que si le Cameroun réussit à se débarrasser de sa dictature, il y aura un effet de domino tous les autres pays africains vont se débarrasser de leur dictature et ce sera la fin de l'Empire français en Afrique. Alors la France est prête à tout pour ne pas perdre son pré carré en Afrique et particulièrement au Cameroun. Il est donc de notre devoir, d'établir ce rapport de force et de forcer la France à nous libérer, de forcer la France à enlever son genou sur le cou du Cameroun, de forcer la France à enlever son genou sur le cou de l'Amazonie, de forcer la France à arrêter le génocide, à arrêter la saignée, la coulée de sang. Trop, c'est trop. 4 ans de génocide, le sang qui coule sur nos terres, trop, c'est trop. Et nous devons trouver des moyens et des partenaires pour forcer la France à nous lâcher le genou sur notre cou. Comme George Floyd qui étouffait et qui disait « I can't breathe ». Je n'arrive plus à respirer. La France a son genou sur le cou du Cameroun et le Cameroun n'arrive plus à respirer. Il est temps que nous forcions la France à enlever son genou sur notre cou et à nous libérer. Et lorsque la France nous aura libérés, nous allons résoudre nos problèmes internes entre concitoyens et confrères. Nous allons nous asseoir autour d'une table, nous allons avoir ces discussions et nous allons décider de la forme de l'État. C'est de ça qu'il est question, les gars. C'est de ça qu'il est question. Le problème du Cameroun se trouve à ce niveau-là. Et Nalova l'a si bien dit, c'est comme s'il y a un grand Manitou quelque part, dont tous ces États ont peur pour ne pas parler du problème du Cameroun. Ce grand Manitou, c'est la France. Ce grand Manitou, c'est Biya qui continue de soudoyer. On a vu comment M. Biya a soudoyé Ahmad pour qu'il vienne certifier que le Cameroun était prêt pour la CAN. Aujourd'hui, où en sommes-nous? M. Biya fonctionne à la corruption. Il corrompt tout sur son chemin. Il corrompt les grands États avec les grands contrats sur les intérêts du Cameroun. Il bazarde les biens du Cameroun à l'international pour se maintenir au pouvoir. Et la France a certainement une grosse partie à la part du lion dans les ressources du Cameroun. La France est à l'origine et est à la source de la guerre qui se perpétue au Cameroun en ce moment parce que la France, justement, a besoin de ses ressources pour rester au top de l'économie mondiale. Mais nous allons rétablir ce rapport de force. Et pour rétablir ce rapport de force, justement, il faut empêcher que la division qu'ils veulent nous imposer continue de se creuser. Il est temps que nous unissions nos forces et que nous reconnaissions quels sont nos adversaires, comment se débarrasser d'eux, comment les combattre, afin maintenant de nous asseoir le moment venu autour d'une table, tous ensemble, tous les enfants de la nation, et de décider véritablement quel sera le sort de notre nation. C'est de ça qu'il est question. Nalova, you nailed it. You put the nail on the problem. This is our problem, and we have to sort it. We have to find ways of sorting this issue. We have to find ways of making those international governments and community to face their responsibilities in what is happening in Cameroon. We have started to do that, but we need to do more in that sense in order to be successful.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you need to add? I know that you have a very busy schedule.
I know. You know what? You stopped me from doing this evening, right? And you know, I also wanted to mention something. I understand that from the beginning, the international community has been like, you know, both parties should come to the table without preconditions. I know maybe people don't understand what preconditions are. It means that La Republique should not say, before we come to the table, this is what must happen. And Bazonia will say, before we sit on any table, this is what must happen. I understand that most of the time, negotiations will always go without those preconditions. I know one thing that they always try to do is to negotiate, first of all, a ceasefire, you know, because they think that is the most important thing. But any other thing, any other precondition, most often the international community doesn't want to hear about it. Now, I totally agree with that. I also agree that they should go on the table without preconditions. And I think that La Republique should have solved this problem, should have allowed us go nicely, a long time ago when this whole thing started. You remember this thing did not just start as, okay, now Southern Cameroon was a country, we came in an illegal union, and that all those stories, right? I don't want to go through all that. It started as we, the lawyers, are not happy with the way the government is intruding into the common law in the Northwest and the Southwest, which are practicing the common law, right? Now, what happened was, instead of looking into this problem, they insulted us. I will not forget when Laurent Esso, at that time he was a minister of justice, he was like, all the lawyers in the English-speaking regions are scammers, that we have taken people's money and we refuse to go to work, that in fact the clients should sue us. And we're like, okay, and who is going to like be for the lawyers, for the clients, when all the lawyers are on strike, And then before you know it, on the 23rd of November, the teachers are into this problem. You understand? Now, instead of solving this problem still, they started doing this, the normal thing they do commissions. I just discovered that anything that goes to a commission or a committee is something that they just want it to die, like this thing is not very important. And then it went out of proportion. When the people discovered that the government was not ready to listen to them, the civil society, led by Mancho BBC, joined into the whole issue. Now, it was not just about the lawyers or the teachers, it was about everybody. The civil society, they had their problems, the taxis, the roads, the water, everything. And then now the lawyers have their problem, the teachers have their problem, everybody has a problem. Okay, the government still had the chance to solve this when we started crying out to return to 1972. Now, the government still did not listen. Now, if the government had listened at that point, we wouldn't have been here today. Now, when we moved from the initial two-state federation, and then we were like, okay, if I have a problem with, I will always say my boyfriend, because we only married people have certificate of marriage, and we don't have any certificate, joining us with La Republique. So I always say it was boyfriend and girlfriend marriage for any layman to understand what I mean. And then we now said, okay, we are no longer interested in this, not a union, it was a relationship. And then La Republique now says, hell no, you people are not going anywhere. Now they start killing us. Now, if they had solved the problem, even still at that time, even after killing, when they started a couple of people, they should have still, okay, let's sit and talk about this, and you guys can go, and then we can always maintain a perfect relationship. You can remember that we separated from Nigeria in 1954, if I'm not mistaken. And we have a perfect relationship with Nigeria, right? If they had done that earlier, this is what would have happened. But when you look at the struggle now, it is not only about the government now, even the citizens are fighting among themselves. You understand? Now it has become much more complicated than if they had solved this problem maybe a year ago. Now you call your neighbor, and your neighbor says to you that, do you know that there is a Francophone that now lives close to the house, and this Francophone points people to the military that they are Amba. Now, the military comes there, you know what they do? They kill everyone in the house, they put you people in the house, and then they burn down the house with you guys in the house. Now, let me ask you, Sandy, imagine that tomorrow we are now on the table, and then we dialogue, and then they said, finally, Ambazonia is gone. And like, do you think that apart from a few people that always know that there are always casualties of war, but there will always be this sentiment, you understand, amongst the people, and that is what we did not bargain for. We wanted the government, not the people, not the civilians who are innocent in all of this. But now the government made it in a way that the civilians themselves are now against each other. You have to date a French person now, it's a problem. You even have to marry a French guy, it's a problem. In fact, everything that has to do with people from east of the Mongo, it's a problem because they haven't shown us that they are brothers and sisters, except for those of you that have picked up the mantle and like, you know what, these people are our brothers, and so we must fight with them together. And we really, really appreciate that. We really appreciate that. The time which the French activism has picked up was something that I will not lie to you. I was one of those that were very skeptical because I have been in Yaoundé for a very long time. I had my first degree in Yaoundé. I have my master's degree in Yaoundé. And I know a bit about the French people. And I was always worried, like, they might never, you know, try to free themselves even from their own bondage. You know, this bondage was not only us, we had our bondage, you guys have your bondage, you see. And I was worried, but I'm so happy that you guys have picked up to this level. And I hope that much more Francophones are going to join the course with you guys. I know we always say that sometimes we need just a few people, but from every statistics that we see now, we don't just need a few people because we have stronger powers that we are all fighting against. So I'm hoping, and I'm also calling on my brothers and sisters east of the Mongo that you can look at what Sandy and the Bobby Tanap are doing. I'm so impressed with their work. Trust me, I'm so much impressed, and they can learn from you people. And I think you people also should try to reach the ground. Like I told you in Geneva, you can, if you can remember, the struggle is always on the ground. You know, it's not in the diaspora. If you don't communicate with the people on the ground, then we are just wasting our time, because talking like this when nothing is happening on the ground, it's like you already say we are on Facebook and using maybe free Wi-Fi and then all that. So you need to begin from the ground, and which is what I think I've seen the Bobby Tanap trying to do. It's a very good thing. So I'll be hoping that other activists, Francophone activists, will do the same. Other Francophone organizations are going to do same. Yes, Andy.
Thank you very much. And this is the peak of our activities. Effectivement, nous, le challenge maintenant, comme Nalova l'a dit, c'est de faire lever ce peuple de l'autre côté du Mongo, de l'amener à prendre son destin en main. Et nous voyons que ce qui s'était passé de l'autre côté du Mongo, notamment la répression des avocats, la répression des enseignants, est en train de se reproduire de notre côté. En ce moment, nous avons les avocats qui sont en train de faire grève, même comme il y a une dizaine d'avocats du gouvernement, du parti au pouvoir, qui ont décidé d'aller contre la décision du barreau. Les mêmes causes produisant les mêmes effets. Si nous nous asseyons et on se dit, ah, c'est le problème, c'est leur problème là-bas. Non, le Cameroun est en paix. Donc, le nord-ouest et sud-ouest Cameroun, l'Amazonie, c'est au Mali. Le Cameroun est en guerre depuis 4 ans. Des familles sont désastrées. Des familles ont perdu leurs enfants, leurs parents, leur village, tout. Et si nous continuons de rester à ne rien faire et à se dire c'est le problème des autres, ce problème va venir nous trouver dans le confort imaginaire qu'on a. Parce qu'on nous fait croire que le Cameroun est en paix. On ouvre les brasseries tous les jours. Les nouvelles bières arrivent. On endort le peuple dans la bière, dans les orgies, dans les choses inutiles. Pendant ce temps, Biya est en train de massacrer. Biya est en train de réprimer. Biya est en train de voler. Donc, c'est le challenge que nous avons. Les Bobby Tanap, effectivement, ont lancé leur mouvement avec cette mission qui était d'inspirer les femmes au Cameroun pour qu'elles se lèvent et réclament ne serait-ce que la fin de la guerre au Cameroun. Et nous invitons tous ceux qui sont sur le terrain à joindre les mains, à se joindre à nous, à joindre les anglophones, afin qu'ensemble, nous nous mettions et que nous trouvions les solutions pour notre pays. parce que ça fait 4 ans de guerre au Nozo. Ça fait, selon les statistiques qui ne sont pas bien sûr validées par M. Biya, un peu plus de 10 000 morts, des millions de déplacés internes et externes. Nous, l'économie du pays est affectée. La CDC, qui était le plus grand employeur après l'État, a cessé de fonctionner. Vous avez vu ce qui s'est passé avec la raffinerie à Limbé. Le Cameroun est à terre et on ne peut pas continuer de laisser notre pays se mourir pendant qu'une clique de grabataires est accrochée au pouvoir et se maintient au pouvoir au prix de la vie des Camerounais. Donc, notre challenge, non, ce sera d'amener les Camerounaises, parce que là, nous parlons des femmes camerounaises, avoir le sens de l'indignation collective, avoir de la douleur pour leurs consoeurs, leurs sœurs, qui perdent leur famille, qui perdent tout, qui perdent leurs enfants. Et qu'enfin, qu'on puisse opposer un front commun à M. Biya et à ses associés à l'international. C'était en fait ça, le but de ce live. Habituez-vous à voir Nalova. Nalova, c'est une femme qui est hyper courageuse, qui a bravé aujourd'hui même, d'ailleurs déjà depuis Genève, tous les préjugés de la communauté ambazonienne où on la qualifie d'aideuse, enable, simplement parce qu'elle voit que le combat s'enlise des deux côtés et qu'il faudrait qu'on essaye quelque chose de différent. Donc, je salue vraiment le courage de cette jeune femme qui a décidé de nous tendre la main en Mondovision et d'inciter ses sœurs à faire pareil afin que nous tous, nous nous unissions et que, en tant que femme, en tant que mère, en tant que mère porteuse, mère nourricière, que nous nous indignions ensemble, que nous unissions nos pleurs, nos larmes, nous unissions nos forces afin de faire bouger les lignes, afin de montrer à M. Biya qu'il ne pourra plus continuer de nous diviser. Comme il est en train de diviser même au niveau de l'Ambazonie, les populations qui se retournent contre les combattants, les combattants qui se combattent entre eux. Et pareil avec notre combat en diaspora, les combattants qui deviennent les combattants des combattants, parce que M. Biya divise pour affaiblir tous les mouvements qui se lèvent contre lui. Nous devons donc dès aujourd'hui faire front commun et nous unir, parce que c'est la seule issue pour nous débarrasser du problème commun qui est le gouvernement génocidaire de M. Biya. Thank you very much, Nalova, for accepting this invitation. And we hope to have you more often and hopefully many other Ambazonian women who will come openly on these talks to express themselves, to tell what they feel, and they really feel. We want to hear what people feel. Even if we don't like it, we have to hear it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for accepting this invitation, and hopefully we will have more programs to come with more Ambazonian women who will join us and express themselves.
Thank you very much, Sandy. I don't know you. I don't think you left me any option. It was not. I don't think it was. It was an invitation. You're just like, we are going to do the show on Tuesday. Are you available? I'm like, okay, that wasn't an invitation. Anyway, I'm very, very happy that you actually, I don't know, invited me to the show. But I think maybe the audience, maybe they have like one or two questions. Maybe some of them, we could take one or two questions from the audience and then we are done for the day.
Unfortunately, I didn't put a telephone number where people could call today. Oh. However, we could organize another talk where there will be a line, because I think a lot of people will have a lot of questions to ask either of us. I am sure that when we open that line, it's going to be an interesting, very interesting show. This was just a warming up just to make people get used to seeing us.
Yeah.
And we will certainly do a talk show where we will open the line and let people ask questions. But for today, I think it was quite overwhelming for each of us. Certainly more for you. I know the pressures. But we will open the line and let people express themselves when we are more practiced to this exercise. What do you think?
Okay, yeah. I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I think we should do that.
So thank you very much for coming tonight. And I think we should call it a day. I know that you have a very busy schedule, and I wish you the very best of luck in whatever you are doing. As for myself, I'm going back to my patients tomorrow. The COVID has come back, and it's a very busy time for us, but we shall fight in our own fields and come together to fight what is putting us together in our country. Thank you very much. So today you had Barrister Nalova B, which you are discovering, and I'm sure that we will get much more from her in the following weeks and months. And your humble servant, General Sandy, who didn't leave Nalova the choice. Thank you very much for everyone who has waited for this program, listened to us, and contributed in the messages and sharing the program. My thoughts are going to Silas. Hello, Silas, and thank you very much for relaying this program. Thank you, Nandi, for organizing this and being so patient. And thank you to all the Bobita Nap who have been very active in the commentaries and the shares. Thank you very much. Merci.
Thank you. And thank you, like Sandy said, thank you to Silas. He gave me a lot of courage before I could appear in this show. And Nandi has always been very supportive, not just for this, but for everything I know so far. Every wonderful flyer that I see out there, I just know it's from Nandi. Nandi, thank you very much. And we thank all our viewers. And I see very good comments about the show. I know we might not have been at our best today because it's the first time, but I think subsequently we will do better. Thank you, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.